the temple was the way it was. That's why our churches are built the way that they are. There's a continuous thread that runs all the way back to the beginning of time. All the way back. And if we don't see that thread, if we just see these disconnected, cute stories, then we miss the narrative. We miss the narrative. Am I making sense here? Yes. Good. So if you feel like we're taking too much time with this, just bear with me. Hold on for the ride. We're going click, 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 you know. It's going to make the things that Jesus says and does much more relevant. You're going to understand why he's the second Adam if you understand what the first Adam was asked to do in the beginning. And the first thing he was asked to do was to guard and protect. Guard and protect what? The relationship he had with his Creator. Guess what Jesus does? He guards and protects that with his very life to the very end. What does he say in the gospel? He goes, you know, now my time has come, and what shall I say? Father, take me away from this hour? He goes, no, but for this hour I came. He followed the will of the Father to the very end. Even when he struggled in his humanity at the Garden of Gethsemane, Father, if it's your will, take this chalice from me, but not my will, but your will. So this obedience to God was the primary motivation of Jesus' life, and he modeled it better than anyone. That's why he's the second Adam. He's better than Adam because he actually laid down his life rather than disobey the Father. So he loved God, the Father, unto death. Willing to, you know why? Because he knew he was going to rise again. Jesus said in John chapter 10, Father, I lay down my life. I can bring it back up again. I have this by commandment, Jesus said, from the Father. So he put his whole faith and trust and love and will in God the Father. And he doesn't ask us to do anything that he hasn't done himself. Amen? Amen. Amen. So to guard and protect the relationship that we have with God more than anything else, to literally guard and protect it with our lives, to lay down our lives for him. It keeps clicking off and it's bugging me. All right, so let's continue where we are. So, was Eve made from Adam's rib?
No.
No.
From the side.
From his side, that's right. The Hebrew word is Tesla. Not the car, Tesla, with a Z, not an S. And the word simply means side. He came from the side, she came from the side of Adam, not the rib. Okay? So again, we're deconstructing our stories and stripping away the myth, and a lot of it has to do with translation. Again, if we were reading this in Hebrew, we would have less issues. But because we are the product of English translations, we're used to this kind of understanding. So it takes us some time to undo that. True or false? God is enough for man. No. That's why God made woman to begin with. Remember, that was my big revelation. The woman thou gavest me, and her commentary she led me, Lord, sent me into this quandary. And it's so funny because I heard Father sermon on Sunday, and he was saying, God's enough for everyone, you just need to God. And I was thinking to myself, I understand what you mean, and there is a truth to that. God is enough for us. I mean, he is the source and summit of all of our desires. But the relationship that I have with God as it is now is insufficient. Even Adam experienced that, and he was perfect. Why? Because God is spirit. And the way that he related to Adam was as spirit. How do I know that? Because in the second Adam, he appears as man. He gets more personal to relate to us even better. That's why the second Adam is better than the first Adam. Am I making sense? It's because God's relationship to Adam was as a creature to the Spirit of God. He didn't appear in a bodily form in the sense like Jesus did when he walked and talked with us on the earth. So it wasn't good that Adam was to be left alone. God was insufficient in that respect to relate to him. So out of his goodness, he created a companion. And who was that companion? Eve, woman. Now here's someone I can relate to. Something I can relate to. Well, as best we can. No man can understand woman. No man can understand woman, period. Period. But she is the helpmate. She comes from man. She is part of man, and man's a part of her. And there is a relationship here that God gives to the man so that he is not alone. He's not alone. He's got someone like him that will help him. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about men and women today. Uh-oh. This is where I get blocked from you too.
But he had to have the companion or the woman to be prolific.
Yes, there was that element too. Martha said he had to have the woman in order to be prolific, in order to reproduce. A man by himself cannot reproduce.
Right.
Amen? Amen. Okay. We're going to get into some basic biology here, so brace yourself. Man by himself cannot reproduce. I know it's a shock to some people, but try and, take a pill, get over it, all right? So, one of the things I want to do is, because I mentioned this, I want to just briefly go over it, because I think that there is another insight here that we tend to overlook in our story of the creation of man. You know how I've deconstructed Christmas. Well, I want to give you a little more deconstruction on how the first man and woman were created by God. Okay? So here's a little image to go with it. If we understand our science properly, and if God used the process of evolution to form the body of man, okay? At some point, God infused into this evolved creature a soul that distinguishes him from the rest of creation. He is no longer an animal, he is a soul, a human soul that's been breathed into by God, that distinguishes him from the animal kingdom. Okay? Now, I want to, I was looking for our website, and I was just blessed to come across this website. It's an excellent website. It's called the Thomistic Evolution. How did God create Homo sapiens through evolution? It's a marvelous website. I want to take you to it briefly to talk about it. A Catholic approach to understanding evolution in the light of faith. And I think that it has a lot of merit to be said for it. And one of the things is he talks about this soul. And I mentioned this a little bit before. It says here, what exactly is a soul? Soul is how we explain life. When someone asks me why an apple falls to the ground, I tell them gravity. Gravity explains why things fall. In the same way, when someone asks me why a cat is alive while a book is not, I tell them the soul. The soul explains, reflecting on the capacities of the human soul, the soul explains why things are alive. A cat has a soul while a book does not. Note that if the soul is the explanation of life, then everything corporeal, every living corporeal thing has soul. A living rose is informed by a rose soul. A living kangaroo is informed by a kangaroo soul. And a living human being is informed by a human soul. The soul then becomes the life force of every living thing. Okay? Everything that's alive has a soul. That's the life force in it. Now it's different from each of the terms. And this is, again, something that St. Thomas goes into a big philosophical debate on. And he builds it out of Aristotle. So that's what this is. Reflecting on the capacities of the human soul, Aristotle and Thomas concluded that our soul, unlike the soul of a rose or a kangaroo, is immaterial. It's immaterial. Whereas a rose and a kangaroo are coexistent with matter. It's a life force that's part of their matter. But our soul is independent of our matter. That's why when we die, our souls go on to heaven. That's not true for dogs and cats and roses. When their life force is ended, it dies with their matter. It's a different type of soul. And again, this is a philosophical understanding that you have to really dive into St. Thomas with about, and really go back to the Greek philosophers about the immateriality of the soul and the immortality of the human soul and how it differs from the rest of nature. Okay? So again, this is something I want you to read on your own if you're really interested in this idea. Okay? I want to jump into this. I'm sorry? Yes, this is how we merge our understanding of our natural science with our understanding of revealed faith. How do we put these two together? This is one way of doing it. Okay? Here I like this. This is an important statement. Importantly, only matter can evolve. Because it is immaterial, the human soul has to be created immediately by God. It cannot evolve. It's a very good point of distinction. So we can believe in physical evolution and have it not contradict or conflict with our faith, because our faith tells us that the soul is something that is immediately created by God. And we believe this about every human life. The egg and the sperm that come together are the physical components of the child's body, but the soul is immediately infused by God at that point. That's different. Do you see that? We have the biological material part of man, and then we have the spiritual component. And I think that understanding can help us understand how could we evolve and yet God creates us. Because God uses the processes of nature to evolve the body, the physical body, but he infused the soul. And I think that's what the Adam and Eve story is telling us. God created man out of the dust of the earth, and he breathed into him the breath of life. So that's a poetic way of saying he could have easily had done this process over millions of years of time, and then at one point infused his life into this creature, and it separated him from the rest of the animals. Same idea that we believe when the egg and the sperm come together in conception, that's the physical side of the human. God infuses the soul. Are you with me? Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to point this out as a way of hopefully seeing how our faith is not in conflict with what our science may be telling us. And how that there's no contradiction here. Because it's the same process that we believe every human life goes through. The moment of conception, a new soul is created immediately by God. The soul does not evolve. The soul does not evolve. It's immediately created by God, just like in Adam and Eve. I would say, now one of the things I'm in somewhat disputation about this website that I want to let you know about, and maybe if you read it and can come up with it, they tend to think of Adam as a name for a group of people. They're not monogenicists. They're not one parent, which I find a little bit in conflict with what our understanding of what St. Thomas said about original sin of all people. Okay? So that's another, I want you to just be aware of that. Because I read further on in this, I thought, oh, what are these other topics that looks good? And they believe in the generation of human beings and God infusing the soul into them individually. But I think that they're mistaken in this website because it does not explain how they could then each individually fall. We believe that our original parents were the ones that fell from grace into sin. Okay? That it was a single parent, not multiple parents. Okay? So that would be one thing I would, but this article in particular was really good in how to understand the blending of evolutionary theory and our faith about the soul. Okay, are we good? So let's move on from this. Now, what does this imply? Well, one of the things that we know about both chimpanzees and early man is that they were meat eaters. This is a big revelation. Most people think chimpanzees are vegetarians. That's not true. And this was proven by Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall's study, groundbreaking study,